this is Aulisio here. I'll be teaching you about the fundamentals of making comic books, from the early processes of doing sketches and thumbnails to the finished product of having an inked piece. So for this first project, I'd like us to go over the very fundamentals and the beginning of the drawing process for comics. So how we like to set up is you come up with an idea. We're going to be drawing one single image with this project. And in this idea, I like to just come up with, stories of stuff that might have happened to me so we can help set it up in a composition. So the very first thing, before we get into a big final sheet of paper, we like to draw things called thumbnails first. And this is just to help us figure out what our sketch is going to look like in the end. So we're going to set up a composition. The main elements of a composition when doing comics and bigger standalone drawings like this is you want to have a very solid foreground, middle ground, and background. When I say foreground, you want to have the things closest to you, the people or objects closest to you, big, basically at the bottom. So let's say, I'll have a character, a side profile of a character right here coming into frame, and then like the back of another character over here popping out. Again, as you can see, I'm just drawing very loose, kind of blocked out images of it. In the center, I'll have like a monster coming out of the ground. Again, I'm just drawing very loose blob figures. You could give yourself a little bit of a 1-point perspective in here as you want. So there's some buildings over on the side here. And we can have something else in the middle ground. The obvious middle ground right here is this monster popping out in the middle. But maybe I'll have a character coming up here. Again, just drawing kind of like a blob to represent where the character would be. And, let's have a big tank coming up over here. And then we just see kind of buildings going further and further into the background. So as you can see, it's super sketchy. We don't do any sort of details, but we just want to set ourselves up with where our composition is going to be, where we have an obvious foreground, middle ground, and background. You don't have to draw this exactly like I'm doing, but again, we just want to emphasize the foreground, middle ground, and background with this drawing. You could choose whatever subject you'd like to draw. This is the beginning of my drawing right now of this initial thumbnail. I super loosely sketch it out. Don't press too hard when you're drawing this stuff. I'm working off, I set off my thumbnail, and then you go ahead and you make a sketch of it. And then on your bigger final piece of nice paper, you're going to go ahead, draw it out as best you can with your pencil. And then from there, we're going to go into inking it. So this is already partially inked, but this is the detail that I would like for you to reach in your pencil sketch. You could still have sketchy lines because in the end, we do erase out all the pencil marks after we ink it. So feel free to be loose with the pencil, but we still want to be able to understand it enough to get some sort of tight pen ink work in there. So what we'd like to do is I'm going to go ahead and use my bigger micron pen, the 05, and this is just simply called hard lining. You're going to go ahead and draw all the kind of outlines of your drawings as best as you can. This is the thicker lines that we see. So a lot of the elements, the people, the characters in your drawing, the outlines of them will be much thicker with an 05, and even some instances you could use the Sharpie. And then after that, we could set it up with using the smaller, more detailed pens. So we want to just go over as best we can. When you draw with the pen, you just want to draw smoothly, one solid line. When you do pencil stuff, that's okay to kind of sketch it out loosely, go back and forth. But when we do pens, you just want to have a nice, smooth flow line of the pen going nonstop with the thicker for the hard lines. After we set up the hard lines, then we're going to move on to using the smaller pen, or 01 micron or any kind of smaller number. And this is where we can add little details. So I'm going to go into this creature. He's kind of like a slime muck monster. So he's going to go ahead and draw all the little kind of details I need and I find necessary to draw on this creature. From here, we could go ahead and add in any kind of sort of little cross-hatching detail as well. The 01 is great for little kind of cross-hatching, little sweat marks, details, hairs, shadows, all that kind of thing. And lastly, we could set up a lot of the big black areas with a Sharpie or a brush pen. inside the mouth. We don't want to use our micron pens to color in big black areas. We could use them to draw around the lines to make it a little bit crisp and clean line there. So I filled in the mouth as best I can with the Sharpie, and all these kind of white spots where the Sharpie is a bit too fat for it, I go ahead and fill it in with the micron pen. But we don't want to waste all of our ink filling in big black areas. That's why we use the Sharpie. And we can also figure out different areas where we might have kind of shadows in this drawing as well. All this kind of hole around him would be black as well. Fill that in until you finish the whole drawing, ending up with a fully finished ink drawing. After it's inked, that's when you can go into it and erase all the pencil marks. So this is what a final product of a singular image would look like. I have a really obvious setup: foreground, middle ground, background. We had kind of a big rock area over here with this person in the middle ground reaching towards it in the foreground. This person goes back from the foreground to the middle ground with their arm going back into space. Again, part of the middle ground, we have this other character up here shooting his lasers into the background on this big giant hand. And behind him in the further background, we just have some silhouettes and different elements to help read it as a cave, to understand you're in what kind of setting you're in. So again, this project, you really want to break it into an obvious foreground, middle ground, and background. Pencil it all out using the process of thumbnailing, sketching it out, and then penciling it onto a final piece of paper, followed by inking it and erasing out the pencils, and you end up with a final drawing like this.